I got the idea for accelerated state conditioning, or ASC for short, clear back in 1976. But it's taken me literally a lifetime to develop its full potential. Finally, though, I'm happy to say, I feel I've come up with a fast, easy, fun, and yet extremely powerful tool for rapidly and dramatically elevating mood and permanently changing behavior. A motivational routine that, I'm hopeful you'll agree, is truly unique, and yes, even perhaps revolutionary. Mood is pretty straightforward, but what's meant by the word behavior? Well, for me, behavior actually covers a pretty wide area to include habits, compulsions, addictions, and even emotional reactions like fear, anxiety, phobias, and depression. The basic idea for the ASK routine came to me quite by accident many years ago while working as a realtor, listing and selling homes. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing very well back then, my biggest problem being shyness, obesity, depression. Being reluctant to make sales calls, I found myself making up every excuse in the book not to get out and make cold calls, especially contacting the dreaded for sale by owners and knocking on strangers' doors in my farm area. And to top it all off, I had a severe case of stage fright. I can still remember my first Toastmasters meeting. When it was my turn to get up to introduce myself, nothing came out of my mouth. I literally froze. I was so petrified. I had to sit back down in my seat and without even saying a word. Anyway, late one evening, while alone in my real estate office, I was practicing what's called a listing presentation. It's a motivational talk or sales pitch, which, if you will, is designed to impress a prospective home seller with your sales skills in the hopes of convincing them to put their home up for sale with you, to list their home for sale with you in your company exclusively. I was speaking out loud while looking into a mirror of sorts that had been formed by the interior lights reflecting off the large plate glass windows in front. After perhaps 40 or 50 minutes of huffing and puffing, I started to notice some changes in how I was feeling and how I was acting. My voice seemed to be projecting better. And although the volume was increasing, my voice wasn't cracking quite so much like it does now with old age. Also, my gestures were becoming more animated, more lively. And my eye contact in the mirror felt a lot better. Normally, I didn't care that much for looking at myself in the mirror, but I was getting comfortable with it. And I was feeling more relaxed, yet cheerful, upbeat, confident. And with these new feelings came a more natural and spontaneous smile, not a forced one. Then I started getting excited. I remember thinking, wow, maybe I really can make it in home sales. Maybe I've found a way to permanently overcome this excruciating shyness in an hour. Just get in front of a mirror, start smiling and talking out loud. So now I'm starting to envision success. Think back on where I said I was coming from, a place of weakness. And all of a sudden, I'm having all these positive feelings and behavior. It's like I'm a different person. And I'm thinking, where'd this guy come from? Well, would any of you venture a guess as to what happened to me that evening? Why was I feeling and acting so differently after talking out loud while smiling into a mirror for close to an hour? Sure, I was getting high, wasn't I? I think I was experiencing what people refer to as a natural high, like a runner's high or stage performer's high in this case. But why was I getting high? I certainly hadn't been drinking or taking any drugs. Now, of course, I eventually calmed back down after that evening, and I resorted to some of my old feelings and behavior, but there were some subtle yet permanent changes in me. For one thing, my eye contact was always better after that experience. For another, I had a little less fear of making sales calls or getting onto a stage. I started paying a little more attention to my diet. I began feeling more optimistic and started listing more homes after that evening's experience. I became a better salesperson using the new insight, knowledge, and skills developed from that extraordinary evening's experience. After that evening, I used the mirror technique to elevate my mood and confidence frequently, especially before going out on listing appointments, to knock on doors. Remember, this was 40 years ago when salespeople did that with relative safety, or to show homes to potential buyers. But of course, nowadays, this is not new. Many of us are aware of the ability to elevate mood and confidence by pumping ourselves up, by speaking out loud while looking into a mirror and smiling. But this was over 35 years ago. It was not that common then, and it was definitely a new experience for me. And of course, more importantly to me, because I was competing with other salespeople who didn't have the emotional, behavioral handicaps that I had. So, as I say, things got better. But then a little later on, I made another accidental discovery that eventually proved to be even more significant. I noticed during my mood elevating sessions in front of the mirror that I would occasionally experience one or more episodes of frisson. Frisson is commonly referred to as chills, goose flesh, shudders, bang, rush. There's more than one form of chills, but I'm referring to a very positive reaction. When I experienced frisson, I actually got pleasurable goosebumps and chills up and down my spine, from the top of my head, clear down to the bottom of my feet. And it felt great. and usually would elevate my mood significantly. Well, to get back to my story, when I would experience one or more chills during the Ask routine, I noticed I would reach my goal of the natural high, the confident, upbeat mood, the feelings of mild euphoria. I would reach those feelings faster. And this, of course, cut down on the time spent during the Ask routine. So I started thinking, if I could deliberately create these episodes of frisson, the chills, the goose flesh. In other words, if I could evoke or create them at will during the Ask routine, I could cut down on the amount of time it took me to get pumped up to reach the natural high that I sought. And as luck would have it, quite by accident, I experienced my most important discovery. The discovery that I'm sharing with you here and now. I learned that I could in fact trigger frisson, episodes of frisson at will. I learned I could evoke, create goosebumps, goose flesh, chills deliberately. The exact method to evoke frisson at will is detailed in a later chapter of this book. And I learned that I could create not just one episode, I could literally string several of these mood-elevating chills together, one right after the other, rolling chills, if you will, for an even faster, more dramatic, more powerful, and longer-lasting natural high. And now recent research at McGill University in Canada has demonstrated a link between episodes of frisson and the most important chemical in the body associated with positive emotion and motivation. And what would that chemical be? You guessed it, dopamine. By far the most heavily researched chemical of positive emotion found in the brain and body that's associated with pleasure and motivation. To repeat, episodes of frisson, artists and musicians get them a lot, and you can too, and maybe you do somewhat, have been linked to significant elevations in blood levels of endogenous, which means natural, dopamine. No wonder chills, goosebumps, goose flesh can feel so darn good. A technical name for it is actually piloerection. Now, what would be the advantage of being able to increase your dopamine levels to any degree desired at any time you wish? Because now, with this routine, you have a powerful dopamine pump to elevate dopamine with accelerated. So what are the advantages? Well, it's important for many reasons. One of the most important being depleted levels of dopamine in the brain and body are linked to all kinds of disease, all kinds of behavior problems, emotional problems. Low levels of dopamine are linked to to Parkinson's, depression, alcoholism, obesity, drug addiction, almost any unwanted craving can be linked to dopamine depletion. Well, what causes dopamine depletion? Unfortunately, all the negatives in life, to include stress, anxiety, depression, poor diet, lack of exercise. The list is extensive. But now, with the Ask motivational routine, we have a way to elevate dopamine levels and positive emotion in minutes. I can create 10, 15 episodes of frisson, chills, in under 1 minute. And this is why I promote accelerated state conditioning as a 5-minute daily motivational routine. Because in less than 5 minutes, once you've mastered the routine, you can change your internal chemistry in a positive way. Technically, I could promote it as a 1-minute routine, but people wouldn't believe it. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit here because I realize some of you aren't interested in tools for elevating mood. Although there are dozens of health and emotional advantages to creating a natural high for a few minutes a day that most people aren't even aware of. But I think you'll agree most of us are interested, though, in changing behavior, which is the second part of the routine. Behaviors like those we listed earlier to include unwanted habits, compulsions, addictions, fears, phobias, etc. But even when these things aren't a problem, a lot of people wouldn't mind getting out of their comfort zone, or maybe they want to find a new sense of purpose, especially if it could be done easily and without a lot of suffering. If it didn't require a lot of white knuckling or willpower. This is where the second part of the Ask routine becomes important. The subroutine of Ask, which I call Super Affs, an acronym I made up meaning super affirmations. Affirmations work on the subconscious mind to change behavior. They're a form of autosuggestion or self-hypnosis. But not all affirmations are alike. Many, if not most, don't work in my experience and can often even work against us. But super affs do work, and you will get an idea as to why in a moment. Although I originally used accelerated state conditioning to primarily elevate mood and confidence, I learned that I could use positive affirmations during the routine to change behavior and habits, emotions, etc., as well. So frequently, instead of practicing a listing presentation, I would repeat long lists of positive words, phrases, and affirmations that I found in books like Self-Talk to try to change my behavior. Well, I was getting some results over time, but I started noticing in recent years that affirmations were more effective if they contained 5 essential attributes. And I started calling these special affirmations Super Affs. The first and most important attribute of a super aff is that it be believable. When you repeat an affirmation that you don't especially believe, you're probably creating more problems than you're solving. And affirmations such as, "I'm rich and powerful," when in fact you're flat broke and helpless, actually may work against you by creating a negative response subconsciously or even consciously. Therefore, if your goal is to become financially stable, for example, you're much better off to repeat affirmations like, "I like it when I save 3% of my income monthly," or "I like it when I allow enough time in my schedule to work a small side job. I like it when I read books on wealth creation daily," etc. The second most important attribute of a super aff is that it be specific. When you repeat a positive affirmation, the more specific the wording is, the more likely it will be effective. The more likely it will affect the subconscious. For example, instead of saying, "I like it when I watch my weight," a more specific affirmation might be, "I like it when I weigh myself every morning and record the results in the log." The third attribute of a super aff is that it's repeated while visualizing that which you are trying to bring about. So if your positive affirmation is about weight control and you want to establish the habit of weighing daily, then you would picture yourself on the scale or stepping onto the scale while repeating the super aff. The fourth attribute of a super aff is that it's repeated while in a state of elevated positive emotion. There's evidence that learning can be brought about faster and more effectively when in an elevated positive mood and during an emotional moment. Doesn't even have to be a positive emotional moment. However, if you don't want to create frisson to elevate yourself, your mood, you can use some other method for elevating your mood besides using super affs. Perhaps listening to some uplifting music first. The key is creating positive emotion so that the memory is more likely to take place in the subconscious mind, and therefore the habit become stronger, embedded, etc. And lastly, super affs are ideally repeated, preferably out loud, 3 times a day if you can, morning, afternoons, evenings, until the unwanted habit is eliminated or the new habit is well established. Current research, some of them are coming out with an average of 66 days is the average time for habit formation. But some partial changes will often happen right away when you start using super affs. Unfortunately, it takes time to change behavior, habits, emotional responses, etc. But if you give up too soon, repeating super affs aren't going to help you. Super affs help change habits by using a basic law of nature. What you think about, you bring about. Once you learn how to structure good super apps using the guidelines above, you can customize your own for better results depending on your current daily goals. Study this book, especially the section on how to trigger frisson, chills, goosebumps, gooseflesh. And you'll be well on your way to feeling positive for the most part and obtaining successful habits or eliminating unwanted habits